This is the machine.
So this episode is about engine mounts. One thing I noticed when I took the car apart was that the engine mounts were pretty screwed. So these are the old style ones that I have on my car. And you can see the one that's on the rotational side of the engine, so going that way, has broken down and come to bits. And these are really, really expensive. They're like a couple of £100 each. And to further add insult to the wallet, you also have these things. Which are supplementary shock absorbers. So that absorbs some of the force, and then these dampen it as it swings around. And you can see that that one is knackered. This one's alright-ish. But these cost like £150 each. So that's 300 plus 400, £700. Now, reading up, the later models had a different sort of shock absorber, which requires a different cross member. So this is the old cross member. It's got one hole to fit the bolt that goes in the bottom of this one. On the newer version, it's all exactly the same, more or less. There's an added tab there, which I don't know what it's for. But there's, on the top, there's two holes, because the new style shock absorbers are combined, well, shock absorbers, engine mounts, are combined fluidic and rubber. So they do the job of the rams and the mount together. And they look like this. So, for £55, I can buy a new style engine support plus two shock absorbers, two new style engine mounts. And that was brilliant until I took them apart. And I don't know if you can see, but one is collapsed and one is okay. And this is the one that was on, again, on the turning side of the engine. So I needed a new one of that. So 55 to get to this stage. One good shock absorber, I think, and nothing on this side because this one's flat. But there's a Volvo part number you can apparently use, which I got off Renlist. And this one came in £41 delivered. It is pretty much identical in height, and I think also loading. The reports are that these are as or equivalent to what these can do, to all intents and purposes. The only difference is that they have a different thread on, slightly different thread, but they will fit into there, that knob that's in the wrong position. But we can make that work. So, the only pain then is taking the old one out and putting the new one in. Now, I did that yesterday and I didn't film it because it was dark and it was wet and it was a pain in the arse. And so I just got stuck in, but I could probably film putting it back in again because there's a load of bolts you have to take out. So for instance, the wishbone holders, the little flappy bits that go on the top to hold it in, the other end of the the other end of the wishbones, and some other bolts. So that's it, that's the solution. We'll see if it works, but I think I've saved a significant amount of cash by upgrading and making things less complicated, because these are far simpler, and in future, should I ever need to replace them, which I hope I don't, this will be much more cost effective and easy to source, because these are still made for off the market, on the market cars. actual fact it is in the right place because I had it the wrong way up. It's in there. So just to add on, my plan is to put the new one on the twisty side of the engine and the old one on the other side. And I'm assured by the internet, which never lies, that this is just a direct fit in place of the old ones. And you can kind of tell this because the bolt holes line up on the brackets. There's an extra two here, which will be interesting, but we'll see. And then I guess I should also look at the relative heights of them to check that they don't add significantly to where the engine will be, because we do want to close the bonnet on this car and put the strut brace in and get all the shit that goes under the strut brace comfortably underneath. Anyway, I'm assured it works. Other thing that this one didn't cover is the holes to connect the power steering rack. And on the older one, I kind of welded in bolts, which I think I can grind out and then weld them back into these ones. And it'll all be good and make installation a lot easier. So I'm just cleaning up these so I can see. And then because this is trash, if you look, it's a good job I took it off, because it's corroded through at this end. In a particular area, it looked like something was spilling on it. Maybe actually power steering fluid, I would think, because that's where the power steering pump sits. Yeah, I'll get on with this and refilm, which we're about to cut out.
Maybe it's on the welds. Maybe that's got good penetration on their welds. Much more there. I'm going to just undercut it slightly. Got to get them 10 bolt and hit it.
Yes. Right, so it is. There we go. I can tidy that up and weld it in. Excellent. 45mm long, that. For what it's worth. And I got 4 studs taken from the old cross member. What I'm going to do, one of them's in here, is the plate that goes underneath the steering rack. I'm going to bolt on so that they're in the right place, and then I can weld them from the other side into place. And just So I'm not the only bodger. Here's another bodge on the one that I've just brought in. You can't see it from there, but there's a bolt. That bolt there shouldn't look like that. I'll have to figure out from the manual what that looks like. But yeah, that's not good. So yeah, this is the bodge. You see that hole there is been drilled out. Oh, you can't see. Anyway, it's been drilled out off centre. Worse than one of my efforts. You can see it very well there. I'm gonna have to clean that out, I think. And I don't know, but it's obviously a common problem. Here's the old one. That's got a bolt that sheared off inside it too, which I didn't notice when I was taking it out. I don't think there was a bolt in there, to be honest. It must have sheared off ages ago. But I have another one here, which has a perfect hole. Where is it? There. Just there. Yeah. I don't know what I can do. It's threaded. I think it's M8. Maybe I can weld it up and drill it and tap it again. Clean it up and see what I can do there before I do anything else. So I'm ready now to weld these studs in, just like the original ones. I've got the plate mounted to the cross member and bolted down, both where the steering rack is attached and these other intermediate bolts here, and located over the nubbins. Well, I guess they're nubbins for these other bolts at the end. Yeah, and that means I think that the steering rack will go on quite nicely, and then I can deal with this fella here, which is the one that's had the broken thread in. Good. Right. This is really oh, I forgot to turn the welding mask off. Fuck. Pushing the welder to its limits with this.
Okay, so it was two per bolt on the other one. That lays with this bit.
So they're like the original ones. 2 welds on each. I think they'll hold. I've piggybacked the Mark 1 cross member on top where I welded, and I think it's pretty good. They all match. A little bit bent maybe. I think it'll be fine. So my cunning plan with this one is to cut it off flush with here, harvest a good one from the old cross member, bolt it in, and then weld it to the stub here. I think that'll work. I've got a short blade, not a short blade, a one that's worn down so that I can get in there without scuffing this, I hope. But I'm shit at angle grinding, so yeah, we'll see how this one goes. But one thing's for sure, this is like beyond reasonable repair. Let's give it a go. That one's too small. Aye, and there's my nub. On a scale of 1 to 10, that was moderately satisfying. I've got a massive hole. But equally, I've got the old bolt out, or the remains of it, what's left. So now that's like I'm going to call that a pure hole. It's not contaminated with anything. Yeah, so now I think I can cut one off and weld onto the top of this. Job will be a good one. Okay, so this has gone from what did I say last time on the scale of satisfyingness? There was some threads inside that I managed to rehabilitate with my new M10 tap. And that means that that's now located in there, and I can screw down the nub from the other one and weld on, and I'll know it's going to be in the right place, and then we'll have adequate thread to take the force. Yes, that's very satisfying. Good. And then okay, so it's a bit of an angle, but the idea is the welds will hold it in place, and gotta do this. So yeah, there's the nub on the base. So I guess they've achieved the same angle because I was cutting them with the angle grinder in the same way. So what I got to do now is I've taken the rust off as best I can, and now I'll just stick some fat welds on there to tie it down, and then I think we're in good shape. Leave the bolt in there. I've chased it out with the tap again. Yeah, and we'll go from there. Just finishing off the cross member here with some of this magic stuff. I don't know if it actually does anything, but it's quite satisfying because it makes things turn different colours. Give it the best, it's pretty corroded in places, but I think it will be fine once it's in. I'll paint it before I put it in. One interesting thing that might not be interesting is that I guess the original is for the left-hand drive with this thing here, I guess to have the steering box, and then this bit is welded in later for the right-hand drive, which is a bit of a weak spot because this is where all the main corrosion is. Because you'd expect all the corrosion to be on this side where, you know, the passenger wheel is going into the puddles at the side of the road and stuff. But anyway, we'll see. It's all quite satisfying. So I've got most of the rust off, given it a couple of coats of stone chip, and now I'm just prepping to put the new engine mounts on. These brackets are identical, so it doesn't really matter which side they go on, and I've made the decision to use the original Porsche one I got on the rotational side, so the engine goes that way and puts pressure on that one, and then the arguably inferior Volvo component can go on this side here. And what I'm going to do to both brackets is enlarge them where the bolt goes through, because at the moment this one's got an annoying little filler nub which I don't want to cut off because I'm worried the hydraulic liquid might escape. So I'll elongate these two these holes on these two. I can confirm that cutting slots is a pain in the arse. You really don't want to see what I had to do to cut them. That was horrific. But luckily the sawzall, or whatever you call it, came good in a slightly scary manner. So before I reinstall the cross member thingy, I'm gonna have to get these power steering pipes out because they look a bit corroded, and clean them and see how bad it actually is. Right, step one of getting the cross member back in. I've got it mounted up, and then if we look under here, on each side I've got the tow hook mounting bracket thing, just with one bolt so it can sag down, and then one of the big bolts holding this wishbone up, not so it's tight, so that I can get the cross member in. And then on the other side I've done the same, so it's balanced. So what I can do now is start getting the bolts in here, because when I tried to take it out there was limited space, and so yeah, this is the way to get it in, I think. And, oh, and I've wedged, you see, I've wedged the wishbone on the bottom of the shock tower, and it's in. So the thing I found was that putting, I can't see, there's a bolt here, that bolt there in first was the best thing to do, and that supports it, and then slowly tighten up the others. So now should be ready to receive the new engine mounts. That's a job done. Almost there. Got the engine mounts in. Whether I can get the engine in the engine mounts like that, I don't know. But anyway, it's all fitted together, and so the new one, or the newer model, fits in quite well. And I guess I've got a bit of a worry about the O-rings on the steering rack, and yeah, I'll have to see if I put the steering rack back in now so I can move the car a little bit, get it closer to the garage when the engine goes back in. I'll have to think about that. So how much did I save? That's the question. I'm going to do it on materials only because it took quite a long time to do that, and there was a lot of faffing with the supply of the second-hand bits. But anyway, on pure monetary terms, let's have a look. Alright, okay. So, the cheapest I could find the originals for, I needed 2 times 250 for the engine mounts, and 2 times 150 for the shock absorber things. Right, so that's like a total of 800 quid, right? 2 times 2, 500 plus 800. for that little party if I was going the original. Right, the new ones down here. So the cross member was £55 delivered, and that came with two engine mounts, one of which was scrap. So then I had to buy the Volvo one, and that was 42 quid, I think. So I'm saying that cost me 97. So the man maths tells me that I have made £700, which I can spend on other stuff, which is fantastic. Yeah, so maybe worth doing, maybe not, but we shall see. But the other good thing is that now that this is future-proofed, because you can replace them with stuff that's more or less off the shelf. Cool. Well, thanks for watching. Next episode, we're going to start getting into the electrics, and there's some fun to be had there, I can tell you. Yeah, there's a sneak preview right there of what horrors you can find. Okay, so see you in the next episode.